Before you slip into
We are back. It is the Alex Jones Show. I'm Jason Burma sitting in. We're with Paul Joseph Watson. We're going to be going to a clip of Wolf Blitzer grilling Rand Paul, guilty until proven innocent, of course, when you're part of the establishment media, about his racism and he doesn't like civil rights. But first, I want to tell you about my latest and greatest film, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. Folks, this is something I had worked on over the last 5 years doing research. Alex Jones was good enough to have me out here in the last year and a half to put this together. Graphically, I feel it is the best New World Order film out there. It has hundreds of quotes from the elite establishment hacks themselves, promoting what? Global government and a new world order. So please get the DVD over at Infowars.com or become a PrisonPlanet.tv subscriber and watch it in the highest of quality. All right, I am going to go to this clip right now. Here is Blitzer going after Rand Paul, towing the establishment line.
On CNN.
I want to give you a chance to explain, because there's a lot of confusion right now about precisely where you stand. I'll ask you a simple question. If you had been a member of the Senate or the House back in 1964, would you have voted yay or nay for the Civil Rights Act?
Yes, I would have voted yes.
So why is there all this confusion emerging right now? Give me your analysis, because you've had to issue a statement today. There have been interviews on NPR yesterday and MSNBC. Tell us what's going on.
Well, first of all, Wolf, I thought I was supposed to get a honeymoon. When does my honeymoon start, after my victory?
No such thing in politics, Dr. Paul.
No such thing. I think you're right. I think what troubles me is that the news cycle's gotten out of control. I mean, for several hours on a major news network yesterday, they reported repeatedly that I was for repealing the Civil Rights Act. That is not only not true, never been my position, but is an out-and-out lie, and they repeated it all day long. It started with my Democrat opponent asserting this, but has never been my position.
You support that, because the argument was made that you support the Civil Rights Act in terms of government responsibilities. There should be no racism or segregation. But if there's a private club or a restaurant where they don't want to serve African Americans, as abhorrent as that is, you think that they have you suggested, correct me if I'm wrong, they would have a right to do that.
Well, what I did suggest was that it was a stain on the history of the South and of our country that, we desegregated in 1840 in Boston. William Lloyd Garrison was up there with Frederick Douglass being thrown off trains and going through what happened in the 1960s in 1840 in Boston. So I think it is a stain on our history and something that I am sad for, and something that, if I had been alive at the time, would hope that I would have been there marching with Martin Luther King. One of our biggest county coordinators was there with Martin Luther King, attended the rallies in D.C., and considers himself to be a civil rights activist, and he takes it as a personal insult that people will say that our movement doesn't believe in civil rights.
But I just want to be precise on this, Dr. Paul. I just want to be precise. Did Woolworth, the department store, have a right at their lunch counters to segregate blacks and whites?
I think that there was an overriding problem in the South so big that it did require federal intervention in the 60s, and it stemmed from things that I said, had been going on really 120 years too long, and the southern states weren't correcting it, and I think there was a need for federal intervention.
All right, so you've clarified you would have voted yay, you would have voted yes in favor of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Would you also have voted for the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Well, I have some questions about it. I mean, the one question that comes to mind to my thinking is, let's say you have a local office and you have a two-story office and one of your workers is handicapped. Should you not be allowed maybe to offer them an office on the first floor, or should you be forced to put in a $100,000 elevator? I think that sounds like common sense, that you should be allowed maybe to give them a first-floor office. I think sometimes when we have a federal solution, we make it one size fits all, and that we recognize the problem, which I do also, of someone who's handicapped, but then we don't take into consideration at all the business owner or the property owner. So I think it's a balancing act, and I'd have to look at that legislation to see how they balanced it. But my understanding is that small business owners were often forced to put in elevators, and I think you ought to at least be given the choice of, can you provide an opportunity without maybe having to pay for an elevator?
So the answer is you don't know for sure if you would have voted yes or no on that Americans for Disabilities Act.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look at it and see. I think you do have to, it's a balancing act, and I am in favor of trying to have the workplace open. My office is open to the handicapped. We try very hard, but it's been open to the handicapped for decades. So, it doesn't always take government for people to do the right thing. Sometimes government has to step in extraordinary circumstances, but I think a lot of times that the private world can step up and do the right things, or we can find local solutions over federal solutions. So it's not always whether you oppose something, it's about where the solution should arrive, whether it arrives at the federal government or the local government. I do think, though, that there is a big civil rights issue out there, and I think the Democrats avoid it, and that's school choice. I think the biggest thing holding down our inner city communities is a lack of good education, and I say give them a choice, let them choose to go to a school anywhere in the city or outside the city. And so I think school choice is the civil rights issue of our era, and many people are saying that.
There he is, Rand Paul, taking the grilling from Wolf Blitzer and really breaking it down. Paul, your thoughts?
Well, people like Wolf Blitzer know that to forward an intellectual argument about something like the Civil Rights Act would take hours. It's an academic debate. He knows that he's got 3 or 4 minutes on there, and that in Wolf Blitzer's case, he needs to dumb it down. And the overall implication that they're trying to heap on Rand Paul is that he hates black people. He's going to repeal the Civil Rights Act. He's going to discriminate against minorities and disable people. And that's what they want to put out there. I mean, you can go and read the fathers of the libertarian movement and professors in universities today who carefully explain where Rand Paul is coming from on this. But they know that the majority of people watching a 3 or 4 minute CNN news segment aren't going to do that. So they boil it down, they dumb it down, and they throw it out as a smear. And that's exactly what's happened over the past few days.
And if you listen to what he says, especially at the end, he's actually for minorities being able to pick their own schooling. If anybody's ever been into the inner city of New York, of course, it's largely minority-based. And he's saying, well, those kids should have a choice at a real education, and the majority do not. And talking about that as a real civil rights issue, that's not on the headlines, Paul.
Well, exactly. And I mean, he's got nothing to defend himself against. That's what Ron Paul said, and it's exactly right, because this has been contrived by the corporate media. They tried it with, calling him a racist country club elitist just because he had his victory celebration there. That didn't work, so now they're going at it from this angle. And the corporate media has lost most of its credibility. So these kind of smears don't work anymore, which is what they need to understand, which is why they're flip-flopping from one to another. And now it seems to have moved on to this. Rand Paul went on the Alex Jones show a few times, and that supposedly makes him evil now. So it looks like they're going to try and run with that one next. But again, it's like flogging a dead horse. Rand Paul and his father Ron Paul have repeatedly said that a significant amount of their supporters are Alex Jones listeners, or at least they're familiar and embrace the same ideals and the information that Alex talks about every day on his show. So to try and, undermine Rand Paul's support base by associating him with Alex Jones and the information that Alex Jones puts out, when most of Rand Paul's supporters have similar beliefs, is just completely asinine, and it won't work. It'll fall flat on its face.
Well, absolutely, but that won't stop them from trying.